And good evening and welcome to another edition of Minority Caucus here on Joy News TV. It's been 4 good weeks of trumpeting our unparalleled records in infrastructure, flawing our opponents. And indeed, we have flawed them in every debate. We have engaged them in, as well as unearthing the many shady scandals that have bedeviled our political scene by the Nana Akufo-Addo-led government. It is in our 4th edition that we unleashed and exposed them on the Ijapa scandal. Today is our 5th edition, and away from all these stinking scandals and all the other stories you hear about this ruling government, our focus tonight will be on the covenant the NDC has signed with the good people of Ghana. The much talked about People's Manifesto, a manifesto which indeed has received overwhelming support and approval from the whole of the country and out of the country. The NDC on Monday launched our manifesto, our social contract with the good people of Ghana, which will be our rod and staff in the run-up to election 2020, forgive me. Prior to the launch of this manifesto, the NDC set out to make the manifesto writing process widely consultative and popular, and therefore adopted a bottom-up approach. In addition to internal consultations within the NDC, our grassroots also engaged their communities and forwarded their expectations for inclusion. Leader and flag bearer of our great party also held numerous town hall meetings with representatives of different socio-economic groupings and sought to derive a consensus on what the next NDC government must do, how it must be done, and the role citizens want to play in our forward march. Our manifesto, the People's Manifesto, is not just a piece of document, but the true hope of the Ghanaian people that expresses their very wishes and desires. The People's Manifesto is segmented into 6 broad thematic areas, which will be discussed in detail in the coming weeks on Minority Caucus. Tonight promises to be a thrilling encounter as we espouse the ideals and aspirations of the Ghanaian people. And with me in the studio is a former Deputy Trade Minister. She's also the spokesperson for the flag bearer. And we will be discussing the next NDC administration. It's about governance and policies. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The big hospital. So, Papa.
Yes, so, Ma. Government is building teaching hospitals, district hospitals, polyclinics, and health centers all across Ghana.
New schools, new roads. What? Here they be, Papa. Yes, over 1,500 basic school projects, 60,000 laptops, and over 6 million textbooks for the students. Wow. Masa moye didi.
Papa, because of small construction, you are happy.
Not just construction, madam. This government has provided over 120,000 jobs to the Youth Employment Agency, and over 400,000 are employed directly on government projects.
We are waiting for change.
Oh, don't worry, my sister. There's more ahead. This is just the beginning. Just let me continue driving.
Good legacies never die. Championing the hopes of the next chapter of our nation's development is a man who needs no introduction. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. 4 years of the Mahama-led administration completed several projects in the areas of infrastructure, energy, health, agriculture, education, amongst others. These resulted in a massive boost in the country's economy. Amidst the gloom, there is hope. 7 December presents us another opportunity to get Ghana working again by voting John Dramani Mahama back into office as president to rescue the people of Ghana. His government will steer Ghana back to glory.
Thank you very much for joining us, Joyce Barr. I think that this is our first interview, so it's exciting to see you in the studio.
Absolutely. Good evening, Obobia, and thank you very much for having me.
And first of all, let me congratulate you. I see that you have been announced as one of the spokespersons for our almighty manifesto, so you speak on governance. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, Madam. And of course, thank you to the Manifesto Committee. Thank you to the Communications Committee, and of course, to the flag bearer and running mate of the great National Democratic Congress.
Your boss played a very key role in putting together the People's Manifesto, because it is the blueprint that obviously he's going to work with so far as his next administration is concerned. First of all, what are your impressions about the People's Manifesto? First of all, it was well anticipated. There was a lot of talk about it. Then eventually on Monday, it was launched.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it had taken a lot of work, a lot of effort, and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama actually intended for this manifesto to encapsulate and reflect the aspirations of the good people of Ghana. Remember that in the run-up to the compilation of this manifesto, he had actually embarked on a speak out tour where he engaged each and every Ghanaian in all of the constituencies in Ghana. He engaged them as part of town hall meetings, reaching out to all of our traditional rulers, stakeholders, citizens, and of course, our very, very proud activists and foot soldiers across the length and the breadth of the country. Indeed, he had intended for it to reflect all of the listening tours that he had undertaken. So certainly, when the party eventually set up the Manifesto Committee, they themselves admitted that it was going to be 1, a manifesto for all, 2, a People's Manifesto, 3, they themselves were going to embark on a further tour, which was actually like an aside to what the flag bearer had done, to be able to reach out, to listen, to take notes, to evaluate, and to see for themselves exactly what Ghanaians were expecting to see in the NDC's 2020 manifesto.
Do you think that that was a good decision? Many people thought that it was a populist decision. If you want to put together a manifesto, what's your business going around, talking to chiefs, talking to artisans, holding town hall meetings, something you termed as speak out, wasn't necessary. And I'm sure that you had picked up some comments so far as our opponents and a bit of questions about exactly what we were about. But finally, that document has been put out. Do you think that it was worth the while?
You know something, Obobia? Having worked very closely with President John Dramani Mahama, I have come to realize that he is a man who understands this country like no other. He's a man who understands just what makes the good people of Ghana tick. He believed at the inception, even before the flag bearer contest, that we needed to start to listen more to the good people of Ghana. That for any political party to enter a social contract, it was for the citizens, by the citizens, and of course to serve the interests of the citizens. So indeed, he had a very clear image of just what this manifesto ought to look like. And indeed, after the launch, when all had been said and done, I personally realized that this was indeed a reflection of the people's aspirations. Indeed, the title of the manifesto, as the People's Manifesto, had well and greatly paid off. I remember all the boos and cheers, the criticism from all of the people that actually were paying attention. I remember many commentators from the other side asking if you have all the knowledge. Listen here, the NDC has over the years served not just the good people of Ghana, but has served in government in the Fourth Republic at least many more years than any other political party. It is not just the largest opposition party, it is actually one of the most democratic parties, inclusive, personable, and of course reflects the aspirations of a myriad of people from across the length and breadth of this country. A fantastic document, a well-researched document, a document that has something for each and every constituent, for teachers, for nurses, for lawyers, for doctors, for the aged, for pensioners, for students, for teachers, for kids, name it. In fact, even my mother was particularly impressed at almost 80 years that finally SNIT beneficiaries will be getting something extra,
13th month.
which is the 13th month. Certainly a far-reaching document. It tells you the level of research, the level of understanding. Remember that we live in a country that has too many cynics sometimes, and so there's a lot of criticism. But I believe that when you eventually reach out in the way that we have done, and then you encapsulate all of these thoughts and comments that you received and reduce them into a document such as we have, it tells you that indeed consultations have served a very good purpose. I listened to a friend of mine from Imani, Mr. Franklin Kujo, and he could tell that indeed the consultations were extensive, they were far-reaching, and they had paid off. I believe that for every citizen in this country, if you want a serious political party, a great alternative to the one you have, then of course you ought to vote for the John and Jane ticket come December 7th, 2020.
Moving on, President Barack Obama in his remarks to the Ghanaian Parliament on the 11th of July 2009 remarked that as a country, we don't need strong men, but we need strong institutions. That's how we descend into the governance side of this manifesto. What is our party's resource in building strong institutions, and why do you think that we need to build strong institutions? What did we do in our first term so far as the John Mahama administration was concerned? And what do we intend to do if the people of Ghana give us the power again on the 7th of December 2020? I'm sorry about that.
Well, thank you very much, Obobia. You know that as a party, in fact, most of the legislations, specifically the PNDC laws that we have, which have all now been translated into acts of parliament under the legal reforms that took place under the venerable VCRC CRAB. What has happened is that a lot of the laws that we actually see today since the birth of this Fourth Republic were actually the work of the then PNDC administration, which dovetailed into the NDC-1 and the NDC-2. It tells you that this commitment to our democratic process, to our governance. Remember that governance as a subject transcends all spheres of the economy, of our sectors in terms of politics, social things, gender, name it. Indeed, the 1992 Constitution itself was one that was actually generated from the views of a myriad of people in and across the country. And I'm sure you listened to the General Secretary who mentioned that they had engaged people from the markets, people from the shops, farmers, all sorts of persons with a view to achieving a document that will survive the test of time. Indeed, after almost over 25 years, it has been vindicated. It is the longest that any republic in Ghana has survived without any interruptions. It is actually with pride that the NDC speaks to the beauty of a People's Manifesto at this time. It is just a continuation of what they have always sought to do for the good people of this country. Indeed, when you look at our track record when it comes to governance, when it comes to institutions of governance, when it comes to anti-corruption agencies and how they were set up, remember that in recent times, the IOCO had actually been a very small office in the past. It was under the tenure of Madame Betty Molidwisu as Attorney General that it became the Economic and Organized Crime Unit. Indeed, a new legislation was passed which gave them wider ambit to investigate, to carry out deeper investigations, research into crimes, and of course to assist the Ghana Police Service in its crime division and work. So certainly this must have been a great achievement at the time. Secondly, look at the judicial service, the improvements to judicial work, legal, education, and delivery. This was all part of the e-governance project. It was actually supposed to provide automation to all institutions of governance, the judiciary, the government itself, parliament, and many of these other key institutions that work in this sphere. Remember that the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice itself is a strong anti-corruption institution. When people speak about strong institutions, it means you want to build independent institutions, you want to have well-funded institutions so that you can stem corruption, is that you also want to strengthen the legal framework within which these institutions work, because all of them must work in a certain concert to be able to achieve the full governance that you require. Indeed, any nation that does not invest in its governance system will end up with very serious challenges. I remember a conversation I had with a colleague about the Public Procurement Act, and President Mahama spoke about it at length, about sole sourcing and single sourcing, and how they had actually somehow become also a conduit for some acts of corruption. And we were here and heard in recent times what happened even to the Public Procurement Authority Chief Executive himself, who found himself caught on the side of a conflict of interest matter and had to step aside or be suspended for one reason or the other. Remember that strong institutions will also determine the ethics of a country, because when you have investigations and you have the independence, you have the human resource capacity, then it means then that government interference will be minimal. It means that even where government or the political leaders are not working, these institutions will still be within a certain framework and work for the good people of Ghana. I believe that one of the challenges, Obia, that Ghana faces is that we must work to stem corruption. I believe that the better institutions you have, the stronger institutions you have, the less corruption you will have. I do not believe that anybody can per se, single-handedly, totally eradicate corruption. But with strong institutions such as Raj, with strong institutions such as Yoko, with a strong judiciary, a strong and independent judiciary, free from government interference, you do know that people will get access to justice. Remember that it was under the NDC that we started the Access to Justice program and carried the judicial service to undertake this exercise. President Mahama spoke about the Legal Aid Board and how there will be resources so that even the poor, everybody can have access to justice. Remember that these days even you have law firms that work even to support and augment the work of the Legal Aid Board. It is also because there are many people over here who have issues who don't even know where to go to. That access or better access or improved access to even laws, to the judiciary, to any form of access to justice program is a matter of human rights. The Constitution itself enshrines some freedoms, which includes human rights, media freedoms, name it. If you have a strong National Media Commission, it means that the rights of media persons, even within the Media Commission, are better protected. The Media Commission will have them to be independent to ensure that they do the work as is required. What we should seek to do, and I believe what President Obama tried to say, was that when you build strong institutions, your nation is grounded on firmer democratic credentials. Because what it means is that the independence of the institutions, as provided by the 1992 Constitution, are guaranteed. That people who work in these institutions work without fear or favor. They work without worrying about being sacked or without being compromised. That people declare conflicts even before they occur. That remember that even at the time when we were in office, a whole regulation was drafted, guidelines on ethics for ministers and appointees of government. And it was launched by the then President John Dramani Mahama. These were all ways to ensure accountability, transparency, and above all, to ensure that people eschewed all forms or acts of corruption or graft.
Very well, but the Auditor General is sitting at home now.
Well, that's part of it. The Auditor General's outfit is one of the independent institutions of government. It is an anti-corruption institution. They investigate private and public institutions. They ensure that the right thing is being done. But of course, we do know that the minute the Auditor General started to investigate members within the opposition, it was okay. And everybody was happy and jubilant. But the minute he started to investigate matters of corruption within this government, it became a very difficult situation. And you know what happened in the end. He was locked out of his office.
In such a situation, does the office become a weaker office?
Well, certainly with that sort of level of interference, you cannot expect the office to do any work. In fact, what it means is that the office has now been gagged and its hands held behind it, making it very difficult for this institution to operate. In any case, tell me, if your predecessor left office under such circumstances, what makes you think that the person who replaces him will do any better? He will then walk the tightrope, try to act in a way that will not in any way cause the wrath of anybody else.
So a decision like that clearly weakens
certainly weakens an institution. The way we sack people, in fact, when this new government was sworn in, remember that the Auditor General was the last man standing of all the key appointments made by former President Mahama. Each and every one of them was sacked. Even when they went to the Supreme Court at some point and a decision was made to secure these appointments, nobody was asked to return to their service of place of work. So these are all things that encourage and break down institutional strengths, create more institutional weaknesses, making it very difficult. So you know that all the arms of government, Parliament for example, it was under the NDC administration, in fact, the Parliament was expanded to accommodate 275 members of Parliament. Extensive reforms were carried out. They started the process of e-parliaments, and where they now had an automated system. The loudspeakers were automated, everything was online, and so you'd find parliamentarians sitting behind little tablets, and all the proceedings could be replicated right in front of them, and in real time. Documents could be shared, passed around, and quick decisions made. I believe that the effort of the NDC, even in the past, are some of the vestiges of what we are benefiting from today. So when you look at our manifesto in particular, it talks about governance as a way of strengthening democracy, governance as a way of stemming corruption, governance as a way of reducing the overreach of the executive into the work of the other arms of government. And of course, usually when there's extreme interference, it trickles down into all the other spheres. Remember that all of these anti-corruption agencies are built on the principles of transparency and accountability. You should look at the people who head some of these institutions. They are some of the most astute, the most thorough, the most tried and tested individuals. Indeed, President Mahama spoke also at length about extra funding for these agencies so that they are able to work and work effectively. He also spoke about enhancing and building capacity in these institutions. It is why this manifesto, and remember that with all the new regions we have, he has actually pledged to set up courts in all the new regions. He has actually promised to decentralize the work of the appeal courts. He mentioned specifically the Western region, the Northern region, so that at least I know the number of cases, largely land disputes, chieftaincy disputes, and the cost of travel, because a matter would then travel from a lower court all the way to the appeals court in Accra and then to the Supreme Court. And every day the lawyers will have to travel from across there and here. So certainly a further or deeper decentralization, even of our justice system, just means that there will be better access, there will be more transparency, less cost. Because listen, there's research that posits that 70% of the litigation that we have are usually from chieftaincy and land disputes. And I come from the north of Obia. I know the number of chieftaincy disputes that have come and gone over the years, traveled all the way to the Supreme Court. In some cases, even at the courts of appeal, the matter can stay there for well over 5 to 10 years. So certainly a great intervention. And I believe that for every Ghanaian who has suffered on the wrong side of justice, who has failed to get the sort of justice they require, who has been unable to because of lack of access, lack of opportunity, or the inability to travel from one part of the country to another, this is a fantastic intervention.
I want to talk about nepotism. We've even had a whole press conference. We've issued a long list of family and friends in this government. The moment you mention it, everybody says, okay, so what's Joyce Bawa doing in the NDC? Why is Joyce Bawa spokesperson to President Mahama? Why was she Deputy Minister of Trade? And then they end there. We do not see other names come up so far as family and friends are concerned. I'm just wondering, with this long list of family and friends in this government, are we going to see a similar trend in the next NDC government?
You see, let me state without fear of equivocation, that I have always served the National Democratic Congress in whatever capacity that I've been able to do so. It was indeed a privilege when President Mahama nominated me at the time as Deputy Minister for Transport. I believe that I served to the best of my capability, etc. But I do think that irrespective of the fact that I share a certain relationship with President Mahama, how many of such people were in our government? I think that is where the real discussion is. Obobia, if you have a government that boasts of many familial relations or relationships, it is within itself a conduit for corruption. It is a conduit where you are able to prevent transparency, where even accountability becomes a challenge. When we first discovered the number of individuals, totaling over 50, who happen to have certain familial connections to Nana Akufo-Addo, the president, it was mind-boggling. I believe that there is a good reason why a word such as nepotism has been used as one of the key components of corruption. It is not for nothing that the English dictionary defines that word.
Very often you hear them say, are these people not qualified? They have all the qualifications to fit into such positions. So do they not deserve it? Or it's just because they are related to the president, they do not have the opportunity to serve the country?
Madame Obobia Dako, I can say that I have 7 other siblings apart from myself. They are all very well qualified in any category. I'm sure President Mahama has an even larger retinue of well-qualified individuals who are family members. How would you feel if at the time when we were in government, we had about 20 of President Mahama's siblings serving in different capacities of his government? I'm sure that will lead to cause for concern. Indeed, if you notice, we have gradually fallen down even on the Transparency International's index in terms of corruption, in terms of our efforts at fighting corruption. Indeed, we have a president who campaigned on the basis of using the Anas principle. What is the Anas principle that we all speak to? He was a private investigator who undertook a great exercise that exposed many facets of corruption in our judiciary and other arms of government. On assumption of office, what have we seen? Look at the size of government alone. That within itself is a challenge to good governance, where you have 127 ministers. How do you seek not only to pay them, but to cater for all of their needs as they serve in government? Imagine the burden that that puts on the taxpayer. Look at the number of ministries that we have, and I am happy that President Mahama in this manifesto has given the assurance that he will reduce the size of government by at least 40, and that the remuneration, the emoluments will be used for better things and other facilities. Indeed, remember that even health is a human rights issue. It therefore explains why we need a stronger health ministry, better health facilities. And when you look at the record of President Mahama and the NDC in the past, it is there for you to see. Indeed, we even have records that even the MPP in its manifesto has now laid claim to the WA Hospital, for example, and of course to the University of Ghana Medical Hospital. So why do you think that you want to lay claim when things are good? But in the event that issues are not to your liking, or where you see an opportunity for propaganda, you take advantage of it. Ethics, conflict of interest situations are what you breed when you have a very nepotistic administration in place, where there's too many members who are closely related, either by blood, by business, name it. For example, when I listened to the Minister for Finance declare that Data Bank had won on merit, I asked myself, at which point did he disclose the interest even of Data Bank in the process? These are questions that we should demand answers to. These are all avenues that breed corruption. You know, corruption is also about a certain perception, where people perceive that there's a certain, and I recall the New Patriotic Party chairman himself, who also doubles as chair of GMPC, had written a very strong worded letter to the CEO and indicated that he was running with a mentality of clanism.
Exactly.
We have a situation where the senior minister created an opportunity within SNIT for his son. And he has 2 sons currently serving in different capacities. Certainly the same with the Speaker of Parliament. They would certainly be well qualified. I'm sure they are. The question is if you have 10 of them, 20 of them, 30 of them, we only have 30 million Ghanaians. So do the arithmetic. So where is the space for the other 30 million who would never be a relative or a family member and will never make it into an opportunity such as that? I think that, you see, as our democracy has matured, we need to start benchmarking on the very best. I'm also happy that one of the key planks of our governance on the manifesto is that one of the main things would be to set a regulation or legislate on lobbyists, on rent seekers, on friends of executives, on businesses, on all sorts of people who all parade around any administration. They are business types, they are very qualified, they're usually very savvy, and they usually have a lot to say. But the question is that we do not legislate anything about them. How much they donate, what gifts they give, what they receive, and how they get paid. There was a story recently, I'm not even sure where it came from, about a certain public relations company that had been engaged by President Akufo-Addo and was being paid with taxpayers' money. It's a matter that we'll need to probe further. These are all things that actually take something away from our governance. And sometimes when you speak to issues pertaining to governance, you must have very strong institutions, well manned, by capable hands, by people who are fearless, who are strong. I remember when Dr. Valerie Sawyer was serving as in charge of our policy and delivery unit. She used to pick up her phone all the time to ensure that you were implementing according to the plans, to ensure that you were delivering within a certain timeline, to ensure that as you are delivering, you are also delivering within budget, and that whoever you are employing to do so is a person who is well vetted and well qualified. The same manifesto under governance is also going to ensure that most businesses, we would now fully legislate on the public-private partnership laws to ensure that we have clear fiduciary responsibilities of anybody who is doing business with government. That it is only in a situation where individuals who are Ghanaian are unable to do a certain service, who are unable to execute a certain business, that you are allowed to partner a foreigner. We have a certain component of it in the Companies Act, where you are able to have, as a Ghanaian, as much as 80 or 90% in a company. You can even have 49% to 50%. But now we want to ensure that we build capacity of Ghanaian businesses, Ghanaian entrepreneurs. And as I say, there is something in this for everybody. Look at the matter to do with the tax exemptions, especially for those salvage vehicles. Have you gone to the port lately to hear how long it takes for you to clear cargo from the port? How much it costs so to do? Then secondly, you have all these people who bring in these vehicles, and because they are unable to pay, the demurrage will accrue. The next thing you know, they are actually being charged. And if they are unable to pay the demurrage charges, what happens? They are auctioned off. There's enormous stress. Look at all of these industrial parks that we have. They are still very, very local, but they would also need to be developed. This is a governance issue where you have industrial parks such as Magazine in Swami, such as in Wa, such as in Accra, that are well developed, well organized, with basic amenities. They are all matters that should matter in any good governance system. Look at the KJTR market, for example, in the Ashanti region. The promise is that smaller markets will be constructed in all of the key districts across the country. This is something that will allow for basic facilities, a small health facility, a small creche for babies, and what have you, especially as we have gone for inclusiveness by nominating Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman as our running mate. The matters to do with human development are matters that are very dear to our heart. So when you look at this 2020 manifesto, starting from the portion on job creation, starting from the portion on the economy, on how to deal with the vulnerable, and don't forget, even at the launch of this 2020 manifesto, we launched a Braille copy. It shows our commitment to our brothers and sisters within that disability association. President Mahama has even promised to see to it that the District Assembly Common Fund, which goes, the portion that goes to that association, would one, be increased. Secondly, there will be trustees who will manage this for themselves, and they will decide how the funds should be disbursed. He will ensure that they will no longer experience any delays. These are all matters that go to give key indicators of a governance system that runs well, that is all-inclusive, that takes care of each and every citizen.
Very well. President Mahama was perceived as being too hard on his appointees. The narrative of this government is different. Many of the view that the seat of government has currently been reduced to clearing agents. Clearly, every corruption issue that comes out, immediately after a few weeks, you hear that that person has been cleared. And sometimes you wonder exactly what happened, what kind of investigations went into it. I'm sure that if we can start counting, we can talk about the Australian scandal, Australian visa scandal, I must say, the Galamsey scandal, the moving Pina one. I'm sure you remember the full one, Maritime Authority. And if I want to add, I'm sure I'll add a lot of them. But I'm just wondering, with regard to the People's Manifesto, what will President Mahama do differently when his appointees are in trouble? So far as a corruption allegation is made, what will be the processes? Are we also going to get the same as we're getting from this government, being cleared and then leaving you to continue what you do? Some are even relieved of their duties and then given a higher position. So what does it mean? Anybody can get him or herself entangled in corruption and the next minute you're cleared to go.
Well, you've heard about Operation Sting. It will not be stinging those who are outside that environment. It will be stinging the people who are within. Remember that Lee Kuan Yew put it very nicely, that any country that tolerates corruption will never see full development. So I believe that charity, they say, begins at home. Besides the guidelines that we put in place to regulate business practices, beyond the regulations that we put in place to regulate, also the transaction advisors and business people in our environment, remember that there will also be guidelines for political office holders. They will be developed and launched by the president. And remember, even in the past, as I indicated earlier, we had a code of ethics for conduct. Note that we are also supposed to declare our assets even at some point. There are always ways in which government tries. Remember that the NDC actually also established a Financial Intelligence Center. This was supposed to counter financial rights crimes, investigate crimes of a certain nature, which are usually very high, white-collar crimes, not the usual ones that you see all the time. They require a certain forensics, they require a certain international outlook, a certain experienced police service. So certainly, remember that when you look at all of these institutions, one of the key drivers is that people have a comfort of a good pension, people have the comfort of a good salary, people have a comfort that if they do a job and do it well, that they will receive good remuneration for a job well done. So certainly, look, I say all the time that Ghana has very beautiful legislations, well-crafted, well-researched. The challenge is to do with what? Implementation. But I believe that when the manifesto indicates its commitment to how to deal with corruption even amongst public office holders, it shows a certain commitment to deal with this canker. It is also serving as a warning to all those who intend to. And President Mahama has indicated clearly that if you are intending to come into government because you are expecting to do the wrong things, then his government will be no place for you. We had
that warning from President Akufo-Addo just before he took office.
But I've indicated that President Mahama's record speaks for itself. Remember that even while I was in office, we had actually even started some prosecutions, unfortunately, of members who had served in his government. Some investigations. And look, for example, look at all the investigations, even by individual media houses and media persons. At no time did you hear President Mahama threaten anybody, arrest anybody, or do any of those things that we see characterizing our environment today.
The next day, somebody wished to make $1 million, and the next minute she had to resign.
And this was just, I don't know, a very highfalutin sort of dream that she had. And she was actually with a private person and having a certain conversation. So there was every effort under President Mahama at the time to ensure, it's a human institution. And I believe that all leaders will say this. And the book of Isaiah 6 verse 8 has a beautiful way that I'm looking for someone. I heard a voice asking, and I came out and I said, look, Lord, I am here, send me. So certainly remember that if you are called, when you hear that voice and you are given that appointment, the purpose for which that appointment is given to you is to go and do your work to the best of your ability. I believe that President Mahama demonstrated first a key component of democracy, which was extreme tolerance. That everybody could undertake any exercise without fear of being arrested, without fear of victimization, name it. I believe that this manifesto, which transcends job creation, which transcends investment, which speaks to great reforms, even within the public sector, which speaks to consolidation of some of these new ministries that just create a huge bureaucracy. It speaks to many efforts to stem corruption. It even speaks to ensuring that there are guidelines in office to make sure that political office holders behave and behave well. But of course, on nepotism, I'm sure that even on that one, the guidelines will reflect to what extent or to what numbers speak to when you declare a conflict of interest situation and how you handle matters of conflict, how you declare them. There will probably be forms even provided. I have seen jurisdictions where forms are provided, where if somebody gets an appointment somewhere, is your relative or somebody known to you, you must declare all of these things. So certainly, this is a country that is on an ascendancy. I believe that President Mahama single-handedly has demonstrated his passion, his commitment, his love, above all, the demand for discipline, even in his own backyard. So certainly a manifesto that speaks to the hearts of Ghanaians.
One of the many popular mentions in the manifesto is about paying assembly members. I've heard quite a few comments about it when people think there's a populist decision. The NDC is just trying to be popular through such a decision. It's simply, let me say, it simply doesn't make sense. How can a government pay assembly members? And I'm sure that you have picked up that members of this government are just rubbishing it and thinking that, listen, what are they on about? They just want to win elections, and that's why they think that they need to tell Ghanaians that this is what they were going to do so far as the assembly members are concerned, and that's why you've put it there. So it's something that is just in the manifesto, and clearly it's not anything that government, if you win power, you can.
You know, the process of local government is actually a very strong democratic tool. A decentralized or fully decentralized local government system leaves nobody behind. The assembly system is actually one of the key agents of change in any district that you visit. You notice that assembly members are individuals who are very passionate about development, very passionate and committed. Note also that in most cases, you find that the district assemblies or the assemblymen and women are the people who are your first point of call. When there's an emergency, when there's an accident, when there's a need that you cannot afford, when the member of parliament is absent, they are actually key agents in our race towards development. So when President Mahama promises to find a way to compensate assembly members for the work they do, I believe that there's nothing wrong.
Why do they deserve it?
Note that for all the efforts they make, note that all the little by
They've been making these efforts for all this while.
Look,
why now?
If a community has no water, the first point of call is the assemblyman. If a community has no working hospital, the first point of call is an assemblyman. If a community has any need, and look at some of these communities that we are talking about in some of our very rural communities, really. How much taxes does the assembly collect? It is even woefully inadequate for the development issues that that particular community requires. So a little stipend, a little remuneration. I also think that one thing we haven't averted our minds to, I believe that compensating adequately, no matter how small, these assemblymen will go a long way also to stem graft. So they are not in need, at least they can afford basic transportation, they can afford little support to other people. I would even think that we could even set up a fund into which a certain component of the national revenue could go in to support the work of assemblymen. I believe that the only way that each community will benefit extensively is that we have a fully decentralized local government system. Note that a strong assembly is also another way of keeping government on its toes. It means that community responsibilities, such as what we promised in the manifesto, you can have, because remember, the assemblies are made up of MPP, NDC, all sorts of people, chiefs, name it. So there is a certain objectivity, a certain purposefulness to the manner in which these assemblies work. It is not by accident that the Constitution itself has actually clearly outlined the need for the assemblies to be well-resourced as agents of change within various communities. And I believe there's absolutely nothing wrong. I believe strongly that every effort should be made to fully realize this ambition of a full decentralized system of government.
Very well. I'm told that the Transport Minister made some comments in Parliament this afternoon when he spoke about government considering engaging stakeholders so far as legalizing Okada is concerned. Do you think that the NDC Manifesto has certainly pushed these guys to make such decision, because clearly it's not something that is contained in their manifesto? NDC has been talking about legalizing Okada, and then this afternoon you hear the Transport Minister. That's a ministry that you are coming from. You were Deputy Minister, and that was certainly not one of the laws there. Was it coming up for consideration at any point in time, or you certainly think that it's just because the NDC has made this decision in their manifesto, that's why they are taking this decision now?
You know, my sister, day in, day out, and I want to give a very pragmatic example. We have many individuals. The worst offenders are even members of parliament who donate large numbers of motorcycles across the country. Why do they make these donations? They're not giving people cars all the time. They're not giving them bicycles all the time. They're not giving them other amenities, cement and zinc. We know the sort of things that go around. You have contested many times as a parliamentary candidate. You know the sorts of interventions that you make. Indeed, you realize that when President Mahama spoke about a mobilization fund for district assemblies, there was a good reason. When he spoke about actually upgrading some municipal whatevers to larger metropolises and all of that, there must be a very good reason. That it means that, because I listened to a chief who spoke at length about even asking that President Mahama should carve out Jirapa East and make it a municipality, because that way he believed that more development would come. They will now have their own electoral area. They will be able to make some decisions that affect the community or the municipality or the metropolis. These are all aspects of governance that feed into largely our democracy. So when you give out all of these motorcycles, and look, this has come as a result of a certain gap in our employment. The World Bank itself poses that Ghana actually, by 2022, will be probably part of the largest youth bulge that Africa has. That means a huge number of our citizens will be young people, that is below 30 years of age. How do you find ways to engage these young people? Did you realize the relevance, the value that we place on dispatch riders in the course of COVID, for example, in the course of lockdown, when people couldn't leave their homes, they couldn't go anywhere? This evening I shared a joke with President Mahama, really, about an example I gave, that sometimes even the police stop these people, and because they are generally not registered or licensed, they actually left the vagaries of all sorts of unscrupulous persons. But I had a better example, that policemen actually go to work on the back of these motorcycles. They themselves use the motorcycles too. But the minute they drop off the back of the motorcycle, exactly. So my sister, why don't we then set a system that regulates them, that registers them? Somebody gave me an interesting example on Twitter that, oh, say snatch bags, they take this and that. Maybe that is true. But you have been in your car before and you've been carjacked. And it was not somebody on a motorcycle. It was someone at the traffic lights where you had stopped. Or you left your car door open and someone opened it and took your handbag. There will always be some pockets of dissonance in some situations. But majority of these people, and I listened to a young man who spoke about having 2 motorcycles and the sorts of money that he gets from there and how he utilizes the money that he gets. They need protective gear for their own protection and for those of us who are also driving. So if they have a good jacket, if they have a helmet, and the person behind is also wearing a helmet. Look, I grew up in Tamale. At the time, it was a metropolis with very few roads. Everybody rides a motorcycle and go to Burkina Faso and see. It is actually a regular system of transportation. Ordinarily, you see a mother with a baby on her back, and she's on a motorcycle. So it is a way of life. You get there in real time. The best response I got was that somebody was late for his wedding, and it was a Catholic church, and we all know how Catholics are very strict on time. He said, look, I abandoned my car. I jumped on an Okada, and he got me to the church on time.
Very often when you post about this Okada legalization, many people come to your wall and then comment that, would you let your son sit on a motorbike? Would you yourself sit on a motorbike? And they simply think that it's something that we, the politicians, will not do, but then we think that we need to legalize it for other people to sit on it and go and die, and if I have to say that. So clearly they think that it's not a good decision.
You know, I totally disagree, right? Don't forget that there are people who ride for leisure in whatever category you want to look at. You understand? Maybe in Ghana we don't often see politicians riding a cycle or a bike or a motorcycle to work. But in other jurisdictions it's commonplace.
Even bicycle?
Absolutely. So they have all sorts of side roads. They have the meridian in the roads that people keep these bikes and lock them up and go into work. Go to Denmark, go to Holland. It's a normal day on the job. You see them packed all day. You just have to pay a little fee and you take it. You come back and you return it there. Why can we not have our assemblies? When they have received this mobilization fund, when they are now getting paid and better motivated, to start to regulate a system that allows either one of us who wants to use a motorcycle, who wants to ride a bicycle to work, have persons who construct our roads, construct side roads that are able to accommodate motorcycles and of course bicycles. You know, these are all interventions that are very, very important. I remember when we decided to introduce the mass transit service, the idea was to create dedicated lanes so that they will get to town exactly in real time. Unfortunately, because the road drawings did not initially reflect those insertions, it became a challenge. So the pilot started from Kaswa, which has a new modern road, and of course the John Walker Bush Road, which was a highway which was allowed for these sorts of interventions. There are many ways in which we can even work to improve our traffic system. I believe that lighter cycles would also encourage people to leave their cars at home. It cleans the environment. Climate change is a huge challenge now. These are all matters that in other countries are ordinary daily things. I believe the People's Manifesto gives each and every Ghanaian a single opportunity to participate in our governance system, to participate in a way that allows for people's voices to be heard, where you now have a bottom-up approach, where you do not allow the top to make decisions for the bottom, where you encourage and engender a certain unity of purpose, that for every project you implement or execute, the good people of Ghana have a buy-in and have a say in it. I think that the People's Manifesto, beyond all of the goodies and the great promises it makes, pledges that our social contract, when we come into office on December or in January of 2021, that we will certainly have a document that is implementable, that is acceptable, that meets the aspirations of the good people of Ghana.
There was that launch on Monday, a beautiful ceremony, very colorful. What is the next move? How do you intend to get the people of Ghana to understand this manifesto and know exactly what the NDC intends to implement when they win this election?
Like we did with the Constitution of 1992, pick up the document, visit every nook and cranny of the country, visit the schools, institutions of learning, for example, explain your message, speak to the people. For every segment of our economy, of our politics, of our social lives, you tell them what is in it for them. I believe that at this time, each and every Ghanaian knows that this document is well researched, that it meets the aspirations of the good people of Ghana, that President Mahama and his running mate, Professor General Pokwajima, have made a commitment that this time they will be bringing a manifesto that works for the good people of Ghana.
Thank you very much.
And my favorite in all of this is the big push, which is a $10 million investment.
In infrastructure.
Exactly.
Maybe we should let you lead that campaign.
Oh, I love that.
And then I enjoyed our street campaign
Absolutely.
also. It was
I think
massive.
that was awesome.
Today we were in Accra Central and amazing feedback. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
I actually surprised myself more than anything.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's been an awesome evening with my guest, Joyce Bar Mokhtari, spokesperson for His Excellency, the leader and flag bearer of our great party, the NDC. We came to you, you spoke, we heard, and have officially signed our social contract with you and presented to you the People's Manifesto. A manifesto with substantive and sustainable policies to create jobs and prosperity for all. In 89 days, you and I will have the unique opportunity and a chance to put our great country, Ghana, back on the path of progress by voting into power. John Dramani Mahama and the NDC, we are on this mission together. The rescue mission, a mission of redemption. It's a communal labor, hence you have to join the train. See you same time next week, and do have a very good evening. My name is Obobia Dakopoko. I was ably produced by Abna Babu and Yaya Kuku. Thank you very much. See you soon.